think another really important distinguishing factor of Ziering Medical and the physicians that we have here are the fact that we're really good at the artistry. And we've talked about this before. We have a finite amount of hair to work with, right? So that's basically our raw materials. And if you think of it as art, because I think that what we do is create art, it's living art. It's a form of trichosculpture, I like to call it, sculpting with hair. What you're doing is using the patient as the canvas and their limited supply of hair as our raw materials in creating that. And I like to give this analogy to patients. If you go and buy 10 flowers and you go to make a bouquet or hand them to someone, if you're artistic and understand the arrangement, you can make a really beautiful arrangement that looks like a lot more. And if you're not really good at that, it looks like 10 individual flowers that have been stuck together. And I think that where we really excel is creating the illusion of the greatest density and the appropriate design to give patients their ultimate aesthetic outcome. And so we do that through many ways. First of all, we evaluate their facial features and their bone structure, and we design a hairline that is most appropriate for them, be it of their appropriate gender, appropriate race, because there's definitely ethnic differentiations between how we should design their hairline, whether or not we use the temporal peaks, whether the temporal peaks are angled, whether the temporal peaks are straight, whether you want sharp, crisp, thick edges, as we do in some patients of various ethnicity, and then other patients, you want a much more gradual irregularity in the hairline. And so we have to determine what is the best and most appropriate. We not only look at their hair type, but we look at their hair color, as we talked about, their gender, their ethnicity, and in doing so, we can determine the best choice of utilizing these grafts to give them the appropriate dimensions of their face. We like often with women, for example, when we're deciding what kind of hairline do we want to do, what shape, do we make it heart shaped, is it more rounded, what are the ebb and flows that we use. We're going to look at whether or not patients have a rounder face, they have a longer oval face, and we can actually make them look thinner. We can also make them look more youthful by bringing back the appropriate dimensions and aesthetic thirds using those principles. And we do this throughout the scalp, so not just in the hairline, but also in the crown and with the temporal peaks. Dr. Kindler, I like to talk about the temporal peaks and how that can change where we place the hairline. Patients generally want as low a hairline as they possibly can get. Sometimes you think they just want a unibrow, for crying out loud. They want it so low.
It's a common request.
Can you explain how we use the temporal peaks to make the hairline look like it's lower without actually really lowering it? Because I think we do that really, really well.
Well, one of the things I think that a lot of people are aware of are the aesthetic thirds, but there's actually two ways to look at aesthetic thirds. The first one is looking at it from top to bottom. They look at it, thirds this way, but they forget about the thirds from this side to that side.
So instead of the horizontal plane, you're talking about a vertical
plane.
Okay.
And I think that if a patient has had significant hair loss, and now you've lost the temporal peaks, which are out here on the side, it makes the face go this way, which ages you at least, 10 years or so. So by adding the temporal peaks back in, then you restore that balance more vertically, and then you have your aesthetic thirds, which are back in balance that way. And it's one of those things that it's a very nice addition to patients. When we do it, it doesn't require a lot of hair. And almost every patient that comes in, as you know, when we do them, they're like, I wasn't convinced that I should have done that, but I'm so glad that I actually did.
So for men in particular, it really makes the face strong, right?
Yes.
So when I'm talking to patients and we're talking about famous actors that people just know are good looking, they talk about Brad Pitt, George Clooney, myself, and what we generally have in common. I mean, we have varying hair colors and things like that, but is the fact that we have these strong faces, and so it's that temporal peak that they're looking at with the three of us, or at least them. Okay. Anything else you guys want to add about the how about the crown? What do you think about that, or the whirl?
Right. So that's an aspect of hair loss that we embrace and don't shy away from. Some doctors do. They think that hair transplant is just about the front, and speaks to their notion that we would concede that there's a limited amount of hair that you have to work with, and their feeling is there's just not enough in anybody to really get busy back in the crown. But I think properly designed, it can be a real additive benefit to a lot of people, and a lot of men and ladies sometimes too have hair loss that extends into the back, and they're sensitive to it. Other people commented on it even if they don't see it so much themselves. So it takes a particular knowledge of design in terms of angles of orientation to recreate a natural look in the crown, and it takes a good understanding of how much hair it takes to make a difference in the crown too. I mean, we all hear commonly people say, well, if you could just sprinkle a little bit back there, doc, I'd be happy. And my retort to them is, a sprinkling of hair in a pretty empty space is not a good look. No. You just as soon leave it alone than to just put a smattering of hair in there. So there are techniques in terms of being able to close it down dimensionally that can get some of the work done if there's not enough hair to do the whole thing. So it is an area that we embrace more cautiously in our younger people, because it typically isn't as high of a priority area, and it's an area where our preventive medicine techniques do the better job, but it isn't a place that we shy away from, and it's quite enjoyable from a design standpoint because of the changing directionality of the hair. It's fun to build, it's fun to design.
It's interesting, when I was looking at the crown in particular and the whirl, and I looked at various ethnicities and the various patterns and shapes that they took, whether it be an S pattern or a Z pattern, not naming it after Ziering, it would just truly look like a Z. One of the only things I haven't tried to name after me, but it is called the Ziering whirl, so maybe I did. No, but in looking at that in nature, it's an interesting experiment for someone that's starting to thin in the back of their hair. If they actually put their hand on their head and move their hair in a clockwise direction and then in a counterclockwise direction, they'd find that one way looked fuller than the other. And when I noticed that, I realized that if I put hair in the direction that was going to go with their natural flow, I could use less hair to make it look like more, because obviously they had the same amount of hair. One direction looks like less, one direction looks like more. Therefore, if I take less, if I go in the appropriate direction, we can make it look like more. And one of the other things, so that in particular is, I like us to do the anterior crown, or the front part of the crown, because that does two things. It covers the back part of the head, but it also gives them more coverage in the middle. And I found that a lot of surgeons looked at nature and then saw that, they kind of went in reverse a little bit, or decided to go in reverse, and they said, well, the most important is this front third. And I agree that most people interact like this, and so you want to make sure you take care of the front. But from a patient perspective, there's a lot of patients just hate having that bald spot in the back, or they hate the drop off from the side. So, that's another complaint that we get, is it just drops off my head. So from the side view, I just don't like the way that looks. Well, we can work with that, because what I found, rather than a lot of surgeons, they try to build the front back to this middle bridge. And I find that bridge doesn't do much of anything. Because if you have hair in the bridge, just common sense, if you have hair in the bridge and you don't have hair in the front, you don't have hair in the back, patient says, I'm bald in the front, I'm bald in the back. And if you say, well, you have a lot of hair right in that middle zone, and they go, I'm bald in the front, I'm bald in the back. So after a few times of telling me that, I recognize that if they have hair in the bridge, they still think they're bald in the front and bald in the back. So instead of working on that bridge, if we can, after we address the front, try to work in the back. And again, I agree with you, Dr. Calder, we should let the medicines do the bulk of the work there. But if we do an appropriate design there, we can get some hair that will give them some coverage in the back, and without it having to be very long, since it goes forward in the anterior crown, it's going to fill in some of that bridge. And then patients can wear their hair back or front or however they want. They don't have to change their style, and they'll still get coverage. So that's one of the things that we've noticed with our design, to take a small or finite number of grafts and give them the best aesthetic change. So we've spent a lot of time trying to figure that puzzle out, and I think that's the enjoyable thing for us, is to get the same raw materials that everyone else gets, and to say, our product's going to be better. We're going to do a better job, and that stems from, number one, our planning, and number two, the fact that our staff is so excellent. You know, I often say I want to be the weakest link in our process. And when the staff's kidding around, I'm going to assume they're kidding around. They tell me that I've succeeded and I am the weakest link in our process. But I believe I'm pretty good at this. I've been doing it a long time. And so if all our steps are great, and I get the ability, and us as surgeons get to determine where are we going to put each type of graft that we want, and in what place, angle, direction, orientation, distribution, we're going to give patients the best aesthetic result, because that's what we're knowledgeable for, and they're really paying for that. They're not just simply paying for you to be in the moving business, take hair from the back and move it to the front. They want an aesthetic change. We've got a small number. We're never going to match the number of hairs that they had, and that's why it's so critical, and I think that's where we excel.